Hey guys, tonight we are going to become digital archaeologists, sifting through the history of the human mind to find the files that have been corrupted, the passwords that have been forgotten. Think about that feeling when you've lost a piece of crucial information, a document that didn't save, a photo on an old, corrupted hard drive. It's frustrating. Now, imagine that happening to an entire civilization. Imagine inventing something revolutionary, something that changes the world, and then, somehow, humanity collectively forgets how to make it. Tonight, we're journeying into the world of lost technologies, the brilliant ideas, the forgotten recipes, and the genius inventions that our ancestors mastered and that we, their clever descendants, are still struggling to understand. To be fair, you probably wouldn't have survived the R&D department of the ancient world, where the primary testing method was often just see if it kills you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you get settled, go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone is tuning in from as we all prepare to drift off. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air is warm and heavy with the smell of salt and sun-baked stone. You're standing on the coast of Italy, near the Bay of Naples. The sea, a brilliant shimmering blue, laps gently against the shore, and plunging directly into that blue water are the ruins of an ancient Roman harbor. You can see the remains of villas and warehouses, their foundations now half submerged. But you are standing on something else. It is a pier, a breakwater built almost 2,000 years ago. And it is still here, solid, unmoving. For 2 millennia, it has been battered by storms, eroded by the constant motion of the waves, and corroded by the salt of the sea. And yet, it endures. You run your hand over its surface. It's rough, pock-marked, colonized by barnacles and seaweed. It doesn't look like the smooth, gray concrete of the modern world. It looks more like natural rock. A modern concrete pier built in the same spot would be a crumbling, corroded ruin of reinforcing steel and degraded cement within a century, if not sooner. But this is different. This structure seems to have made a kind of peace with the sea. It has become part of the landscape. And as you stand there, listening to the waves, you find yourself asking the central question, how did they build something that has so effortlessly outlasted our own advanced technology? The answer is a lost recipe, a form of concrete so ingenious, so perfectly suited to its environment, that we are only now, with all our modern science, beginning to unravel its secrets. The Romans were masters of concrete. You've seen their work in the magnificent, unsupported dome of the Pantheon or in the colossal arches of the Colosseum and the aqueducts. They called their concrete opus cementitium, but the concrete they used for building in the sea was a special blend, a work of chemical genius. Your journey takes you inland to the rolling hills that surround the slumbering form of Mount Vesuvius. Here, the earth is rich with a special kind of volcanic ash, a fine, reddish-brown powder. The Romans called it pozzolana, and they discovered that when they mixed this ash with lime, a caustic powder made from heated limestone, it created a mortar of incredible strength. But the real magic happened when this mortar met water. Unlike a simple mud or clay mortar that would dissolve, this pozzolana mortar not only hardened when exposed to water, it could harden underwater. This discovery was the key to unlocking the sea. It allowed Roman engineers to build massive, solid structures directly in the open ocean. They would construct wooden forms, drive them into the seabed, and then pack them with their mortar and chunks of rock. The seawater itself became an active ingredient, kicking off a chemical reaction that would fuse the entire mass into a single, monolithic structure, a man-made rock as solid as the coastline itself. But even this doesn't explain the incredible longevity of the pier you're standing on. It doesn't explain why it seems immune to the relentless chemical attack of salt water. For that, we have to zoom in, past what the Roman engineers could see, past the visible world, and into the molecular structure of the concrete itself. Here, in the microscopic world, is where the true lost art is found. Modern scientists, analyzing samples of this ancient maritime concrete, discovered something astonishing. The Roman recipe of lime, volcanic ash, and seawater creates a chemical reaction that grows a network of interlocking, plate-like crystals of a rare and incredibly durable mineral called aluminous tobermorite. These crystals make the concrete incredibly strong and resilient. But that's only half the secret. The real genius, the part that we have only recently rediscovered, is that the concrete actively heals itself. As tiny stress fractures form in the concrete over the decades from the pounding of the waves, seawater seeps into these cracks. This water then triggers a new round of chemical reactions. With the still uncured particles of volcanic ash embedded deep within the concrete, new crystals of tobermorite, along with another mineral called philipsite, begin to grow, knitting the crack shut from the inside out. The concrete doesn't just resist damage, it repairs it. The very thing that should destroy it, the corrosive, infiltrating seawater, is the ingredient that makes it stronger over time. It is a living stone, a material in a slow, constant dialogue with its environment. So why was this incredible knowledge lost? If it was so good, why did we stop using it? Part of the answer lies in another secret of the recipe, a specific technique that was likely never written down. Recent research suggests the Romans used a method called hot mixing. Instead of first slaking their lime with water to create a stable putty, they likely mixed quicklime, the highly reactive, unslaked form, directly with the dry pozzolana ash and rock, and then added water. This would have created a violent exothermic reaction, causing the entire mixture to heat up to extreme temperatures. It would have been a dangerous, difficult process, requiring immense skill and experience to manage. But this heat would have created chemical compounds and crystalline structures impossible to form at lower temperatures. It created pockets of reactive lime within the cured concrete, which acted as the reservoirs for its self-healing ability for centuries to come. Think of it as a kind of high-temperature baking, a trial by fire that gave the concrete its immortal properties. And this is where we come to the debate. Historians and material scientists still debate exactly how widespread this hot mixing technique was. Was it a specific trick used by elite military engineers for high-value maritime projects? A state secret for building the ports that were the lifeblood of the empire? Or was it a more common rule of thumb knowledge, a technique passed down from master builder to apprentice, a skill learned by feel and by sight, not from a textbook. There was no master manual for Roman engineering, no concrete for dummies scroll. The knowledge was practical, passed on through generations of builders. And when the Western Roman Empire began to crumble in the 4th and 5th centuries, this system of passing down knowledge broke down with it. The vast trade networks that brought pozzolana ash from Italy to the far corners of the empire collapsed. The large-scale state-funded construction projects ceased. The legions of military engineers were disbanded in the chaos that followed. The subtle, unwritten arts of the master builders simply faded away. The recipe was not so much lost as it was forgotten, a victim of societal collapse. There was no save button for their genius, and so you find yourself back on that ancient pier, the setting sun glinting off the water. The seagulls, who have been using this structure as a resting place for 60 generations, are the only continuous witnesses to its strength. The concrete beneath your feet is a silent testament to a lost art, a technology that was born from a unique combination of geology, ingenuity, and hard-won, hands-on experience. It is a quiet reminder that sometimes the most advanced ideas are not in the future, but buried deep in the past, waiting patiently for us to rediscover the secrets we once knew. The secret of Rome's self-healing concrete was a recipe, a kind of knowledge that faded slowly like a treasured family dish whose instructions grow vague with each passing generation until the taste can no longer be replicated. It was a gradual forgetting, a loss born from the slow decay of an empire, but some lost technologies are not like a faded recipe. They are like a complete, detailed blueprint for a machine of impossible genius, a blueprint that seems to have been utterly erased from history, leaving behind only one single, baffling survivor. To find this ghost, we must leave the sun-drenched Roman pier and sink down, down into the cold, silent darkness of the deep sea. The year is 1900. You are on the deck of a small, weather-beaten boat, crewed by Greek sponge divers. A fierce storm has blown you off course, and you have taken shelter near the tiny rocky island of Antikythera. When the storm passes, the captain, a man named Demetrios Kontos, sends one of his divers down to search for sponges in this new, unexplored territory. The diver is Elias Stadiatis. He descends into the blue, a heavy bronze helmet on his head, connected to the surface by a simple, pulsating air hose. Minutes later, he surfaces with a look of terror in his eyes, babbling about a field of rotting corpses, men and horses scattered across the seabed. Kontos, thinking the diver has gone mad from the pressure, dives down himself to check. What he finds is not a field of corpses, but something far more astonishing, the wreck of a massive Roman trading vessel, sunk nearly 2,000 years before. The bodies are a treasure trove of magnificent bronze and marble statues, knocked from their pedestals by the violence of the sinking. For the next several months, these sponge divers, with heroic and dangerous effort, begin to bring the treasures of the Antikythera wreck to the surface. It is one of the greatest underwater archaeological finds in history. Statues of gods and heroes, beautiful glassware, intricate pottery, all are painstakingly lifted from their watery grave and sent to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. And among all this magnificent art, they find a lump. It is a greenish, corroded lump of what looks like bronze and rotted wood, about the size of a large book or a modern laptop. It's ugly, unassuming, and completely ignored. Next to the breathtaking life-size statue of the Antikythera youth, this lump is just a piece of ancient garbage. It is logged, stored on a shelf in the museum, and forgotten for months. It is the least interesting thing to come from the shipwreck. But as the lump sits in the dry museum air, the ancient wood within it shrinks, and the layers of corroded bronze begin to crack and flake apart. One day, a museum staffer notices that a piece has broken off, revealing something inside that makes no sense at all. It is a gear wheel, a perfectly formed bronze disc with small, triangular teeth. This is not a piece of a statue. This is not a rock. This is a machine. Your perspective shifts. You are no longer in the dusty museum of 1902, but in a series of modern laboratories, spanning decades. The ugly lump is now the subject of intense, painstaking study. At first, scholars can only guess at its function. But as technology advances, so does our ability to peer inside. You watch as the first X-rays are taken in the 1970s, revealing more gears, more hidden layers. Then, in the early 2000s, you see it subjected to advanced computer tomography, a CT scan, and high-resolution surface imaging. Slowly, painstakingly, scientists begin to digitally reconstruct the device, peeling back the layers of corrosion like a virtual onion. And what is revealed inside is breathtaking. It is a clockwork mechanism of staggering complexity, a universe of at least 30, and perhaps as many as 72, interlocking bronze gears, all fitting within a wooden case with front and back doors, covered in inscriptions, a detailed user's manual. On the front of the device is a large central dial. This dial marked the 365 days of the Egyptian calendar, with another nested ring showing the 12 signs of the Greek zodiac. A crank on the side of the machine would set the whole system in motion. As you turn the crank, pointers on the front dial would move, showing the precise position of the sun and the moon in the sky on any given day. It also likely tracked the 5 planets visible to the naked eye: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. It was a portable mechanical calendar of the cosmos. But the true genius, the part that sent shockwaves through the history of science, is found on the back. There, instead of simple circles, are 2 large, elegant spiral dials. The top spiral is a 19-year calendar, what is known as the Metonic cycle. This is the fundamental rhythm that reconciles the cycles of the sun and the moon, a crucial piece of knowledge for any agricultural or religious society. The bottom spiral is even more remarkable. It is a 223-month Saros cycle dial, its purpose to predict eclipses, both solar and lunar. A user of this device could turn the crank to a future date and know, with incredible accuracy, if an eclipse was due, and even what time of day it would be visible. It was a portable oracle. And as you zoom further into the digital reconstruction, you find the most sophisticated piece of engineering in the whole device. The ancient Greeks knew that the moon's orbit is not a perfect, steady circle. It seems to speed up and slow down from our perspective as it moves along its elliptical path. To account for this anomaly, the maker of the Antikythera mechanism employed a breathtakingly clever trick. They mounted one of the main gears that drives the moon pointer on top of a smaller secondary gear, but slightly off-center. This pin and slot mechanism caused the moon pointer to subtly speed up and slow down, perfectly mimicking what they observed in the sky. This kind of epicyclic gearing, this mechanical solution to a complex astronomical problem, was not thought to have been invented until the great cathedral clockmakers of 14th century Europe, some 400 years later. And yet, here it was, resting on the seabed since the time of Julius Caesar. Amidst all this cosmic grandeur, you find one small, wonderfully human detail. A small subsidiary dial on the back tracks a 4-year cycle. It is inscribed with the names of different Pan-Hellenic games: the Isthmian, the Pythian, the Nemean, and the most famous of all, the Olympian. This device didn't just track the heavens, it tracked the Olympics. It was the world's first analog sports scheduling app, a reminder that even for the most scientifically minded ancient Greek, knowing when the next big game was happening was critically important. The existence of this single object completely rewrote the book on ancient technology. It was a quiet, relentless assault on our assumptions about the past. But it also opened up a profound mystery. Historians and archaeologists still debate vigorously where the device was made. Was it the island of Rhodes, a center for astronomy and the home of the great astronomer Hipparchus, whose theory of the moon's motion seems to be encoded in the machine? Or was it perhaps Syracuse, the home of the legendary Archimedes, who was said to have built mechanical spheres that modeled the cosmos? And this leads to the biggest, most haunting question of all, the one that defines it as a truly lost technology. Was the Antikythera mechanism a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, a singular creation of a lone, forgotten genius, like a Shakespeare play or a Da Vinci painting? Or is it something even more incredible, the sole, lucky survivor of a widespread but now vanished tradition of Hellenistic mechanical engineering? Are we looking at the ancient world's only iPhone? Or are we looking at the only iPhone that happened to survive a plane crash, while thousands of others just rusted away? The Roman concrete was knowledge that faded. The Antikythera mechanism represents knowledge that was seemingly erased. There are no other texts that describe how to build such a thing. There are no other, simpler machines that show the evolution of the idea. There is only this one miraculous, gear-filled ghost, a silent testament to a level of mechanical genius that once existed, and was then utterly and completely lost to the world, leaving us to wonder what other secrets are still waiting in the dark, silent depths of the sea. The Antikythera mechanism is a ghost. It is a physical echo of a tradition of mechanical genius that vanished so completely from the historical record that its existence feels like a dream. It was a secret lost to the slow, gentle decay of time and the crushing silence of the sea. But some secrets are not lost by accident. They are lost by design. They are guarded so closely, deemed so valuable and so dangerous, that the circle of knowledge is kept intentionally small. So small, in fact, that when the last person in the circle is gone, the secret vanishes from the world forever. To find such a secret, we leave the quiet, analytical world of the museum and travel to a place of fire and fear and the chaos of battle. The year is now somewhere around 717 A.D. You are standing on the rolling deck of a Byzantine warship, a swift, lean vessel called a dromon. The air is sharp with the smell of salt and damp wood. In the distance, you can see the magnificent, legendary sea walls of Constantinople, the richest and most powerful city in the Christian world. But between you and the safety of those walls is a vast fleet of enemy ships, Arab vessels blockading the great city, their crescent banners snapping in the wind. They outnumber your fleet dramatically. By all logic, the city is doomed, but the mood on your ship is not one of despair. It is one of tense, focused, and deadly confidence. Your fleet has a secret. Your attention is drawn to the bow of the ship. A small crew of specialized sailors, their faces grim, are gathered around a strange and fearsome-looking device. It is a large tube, plated in bronze and mounted on a swivel, allowing it to be aimed. Behind it is a complex pump and boiler system, which is now beginning to hiss with pressure. This is the siphon, the delivery system for the Empire's most powerful weapon, the technology that has kept the city safe for decades. This is the nozzle for the dragon's breath. The enemy ships draw closer, confident in their numbers. The order is shouted across the deck. The sailors on the bow begin to work the pump with a frantic, rhythmic energy. You hear a low roar from within the machine, and then, with a terrifying force, the siphon unleashes its payload. It is not a cannonball. It is not a volley of arrows. It is a thick, syrupy stream of liquid that erupts from the nozzle and ignites the moment it hits the air. A torrent of living, roaring fire washes over the closest enemy ship. This is Greek fire. The effect is instantaneous and horrifying. The fire is not like a normal wood fire. It is thick, sticky, and tenacious. It clings to everything it touches: the wooden hull of the ship, the canvas sails, the ropes of the rigging. It is like a burning liquid glue. The enemy sailors are thrown into a panic. They try to beat the flames out with blankets, but the sticky substance just spreads. And then they make the most natural and most fatal mistake. They throw buckets of seawater onto the blaze, and the fire, instead of being doused, erupts with even greater fury. The water seems to feed it, to make it burn hotter, angrier. It spreads across the surface of the sea itself, a carpet of inextinguishable flame that begins to drift towards the other ships in the fleet. It is a weapon that breaks the laws of nature. It is fire that cannot be put out. It is a weapon of pure terror, designed not just to destroy a ship, but to shatter the morale of an entire navy. The psychological impact is as devastating as the physical damage. Who can fight an enemy who wields a fire that water cannot quench? As you watch the chaos unfold from the deck of the Byzantine ship, you wonder, what is this substance? How is this possible? And in that question, you are asking one of the greatest lost technology mysteries of all time. The precise formula for Greek fire was the most closely guarded state secret of the Byzantine Empire. It was on par with the United States nuclear codes today. Its production was limited to a small, trusted guild of chemists in Constantinople, a secret reportedly passed down through a single family, the descendants of a man named Kallinikos, a Christian refugee from Syria who is said to have brought the knowledge to the emperor in the year 672. The punishment for revealing the formula was death. The secret was never written down in any public manual or encyclopedia. Historians and chemists have been debating the recipe for centuries, trying to reverse engineer it from the terrified descriptions of its victims. The base was almost certainly a petroleum or naphtha distillate, which the Byzantines had access to from naturally occurring wells around the Black Sea. This would have made it a sticky, oil-based fire. To this, they would have added other ingredients, Pine resin was likely one, to make it even stickier and help it adhere to vertical surfaces. But the true secret, the part that has been lost, is what made it ignite and what made it react so violently with water. Was it a mixture containing calcium phosphide? This chemical can be created by heating lime, bones, and urine, and it has the unique property of igniting spontaneously on contact with water. Perhaps the fire was a two-part mixture, and this was the secret igniter. Or did the recipe include quicklime, which is calcium oxide quicklime, when mixed with water, undergoes a powerful exothermic reaction, generating immense heat, perhaps enough to ignite the petroleum mixture, or maybe, just maybe, the formula included an early unrefined form of saltpeter potassium nitrate, the key ingredient that would later form the basis of gunpowder. This could have provided the fire with its own source of oxygen, allowing it to burn so fiercely and to be so difficult to extinguish. We will never know for sure. The secret was kept too well. For over 500 years, this single technology was the shield of the Byzantine Empire. It twice saved Constantinople from massive Arab sieges. In 678 and again in 717, the battle you're now witnessing. These were not just minor victories. Many historians argue that by repelling these invasions, the Byzantines prevented the Islamic conquest of southeastern Europe, fundamentally altering the course of Western civilization. An entire empire, for a time, rested its security on a single, secret chemical formula. So how could something so important just disappear? The loss of Greek fire was a direct result of the extreme secrecy that surrounded it. Knowledge that is not shared is fragile. It exists only in the minds of a few people. As the Byzantine Empire began its long, slow decline, beset by internal strife and external enemies, the institutions that protected such secrets began to fray. The small, secretive family of chemists who held the formula may have died out in a plague, been killed in a palace coup, or simply failed to pass the knowledge on to the next generation. The chain of custody was broken. By the time of the Fourth Crusade in 1204, when an army of Western European knights turned on their supposed allies and brutally sacked the city of Constantinople, it appears the Byzantines no longer possessed their most potent weapon. They had forgotten how to make it. The secret had been guarded so effectively that it had been guarded from their own descendants. The recipe for dragon's breath had vanished from the earth. All that is left are the dramatic, fearful accounts in the historical record and a tantalizing chemical mystery that still burns in our historical imagination. It is the ultimate proof that the most effective way to lose a secret is to guard it too well. The secret of Greek fire was a chemical formula, a recipe for liquid destruction that was guarded so closely by the Byzantine state that it was eventually smothered into extinction, while the emperors of Constantinople protected their secret of unquenchable flame. Another legendary technology was being perfected in the smoky forges of the Near East. This secret was not a liquid to be sprayed, but a solid of impossible quality. It was not a weapon of shock and awe, but one of elegance and deadly perfection. We leave the fiery decks of the Byzantine navy and travel to the heart of the desert caravan routes, to a city whose name would become synonymous with a metal that was the stuff of legend, Damascus. The scene shifts. You are no longer a Byzantine sailor, but a European knight, a crusader somewhere in the searing heat of the 12th century Levant. You are clad in heavy chain mail and a thick tunic, wielding a broadsword that is strong, heavy, and, if you're being honest, a bit clumsy. It's a tool for bludgeoning and crushing as much as for cutting. And then you see them in the hands of your Saracen adversaries. Their swords are different. They are often curved, lighter, and they seem to possess a life of their own. You hear the stories in the camp at night, tales that sound like exaggerations. A Saracen warrior who can slice a falling piece of silk in half with a touch of his blade, a sword that can cleave through a crusader's iron helmet and then, moments later, bend nearly in half without snapping. You look at the blades themselves and you see a strange, beautiful, and unsettling pattern on the surface of the steel, a mesmerizing, watery shimmer that seems to move in the light. This is your introduction to Damascus steel, and your first thought is that it must be some kind of magic. To understand the secret, your perspective must travel away from the battlefield and towards the source. You find yourself in a bustling, noisy smithy in the city of Damascus. The air is thick with the smell of burning coal and the ringing, rhythmic song of hammers striking anvils. A master smith, his face beaded with sweat, is at work, and you soon learn the first secret: the legendary steel is not actually made in Damascus. The city is a center for trade and for the master craftsmen who work the metal, but the metal itself, the raw material, has traveled thousands of miles to be here. The smith begins not with a lump of local iron ore, but with a small, dense, rounded cake of steel. It's a dark, unassuming object that has been purchased from a merchant whose caravan has just arrived from the east. This cake of steel is called woots, and it was smelted in specialized crucibles in southern India or Sri Lanka, using techniques that were themselves a closely guarded secret. The woot steel is unusually high in carbon, and, crucially, it contains trace amounts of other elements from its specific iron ore source impurities like vanadium, chromium, and tungsten. The Indian smiths didn't know about these elements, of course. They just knew that the ore from certain mines produced the best woots. This small cake of steel is the key, the starting point for the entire process. You watch the master smith begin his work. It is not a process of brute force, but of almost meditative patience. He heats the woots cake in his forge, but he is incredibly careful not to overheat it. If the temperature gets too high, the delicate internal structure of the steel will be ruined forever. He watches the color of the glowing metal with an expert eye, looking for a specific shade of cherry red or straw yellow. When the temperature is just right, he begins to hammer it. But his blows are not just powerful. They are precise, controlled, shaping the metal, folding it, working it, coaxing it into the shape of a blade. This cycle of gentle heating and careful hammering is repeated over and over for hours, even days. The smith is not just shaping a sword. He is performing a kind of solid-state alchemy. He is controlling the migration of carbon atoms within the steel, forcing them to align and precipitate into microscopic structures. He is following a recipe that is not written down, but exists in the memory of his hands and the wisdom passed down from his master and his master's master before him. It is a living tradition, a secret held in the rhythm of the hammer. Finally, the blade is shaped, quenched, and polished to a mirror shine. It is already a weapon of incredible quality, but the final signature step is what reveals its soul. The smith carefully applies an acidic substance to the surface of the blade. The acid etches the steel, eating away at the surface layers at different rates, and as he wipes the acid away, the magic is revealed. The watery, swirling patterns, known as the damask, emerge across the entire surface of the blade. This pattern is not painted on. It is the visible ghost of the steel's internal structure. Now, your perspective zooms in far beyond what the smith or the knight could ever see into the nanoscopic world. With the power of a modern electron microscope, you can see the true secret of Damascus steel. The careful, low-temperature forging process has caused the carbon atoms in the wootz steel to form into ultra-hard nanowires of a compound called cementite. These invisible wires are suspended in a matrix of softer, more pliable steel called pearlite. The swirling patterns of the damask are the large-scale bands of these cementite structures. This is the source of the blade's legendary paradoxical properties. The incredibly hard cementite nanowires give the blade its phenomenal cutting edge, an edge that can be honed to microscopic sharpness and will stay sharp through incredible abuse. But the softer, more flexible steel matrix around the wires allows the blade to absorb shock and bend without breaking. It is a nanocomposite material, a perfect harmony of hardness and ductility. The Damascus smith was, without knowing it, a master of nanotechnology, creating these perfect structures 1,000 years before we even had the tools to see them. So, if this technology was so superior, why did it vanish? By the year 1800, the art was completely lost. Smiths were still making patterned blades, but they lacked the true properties of the originals. This is the great debate for historians and metallurgists. What exactly was lost? Was it the raw material? Some theories suggest that the specific mines in India that produced the wootz ore with the perfect cocktail of trace impurities, that little bit of vanadium that was so crucial for the formation of the nanowires, were simply exhausted. Once the unique starting ingredient was gone, the recipe, no matter how perfect, was useless. Or was it the loss of the craft itself? Perhaps the demand for these expensive, labor-intensive swords dwindled as cheaper, mass-produced steel became available. As the old masters died without passing on their secretive oral tradition of forging techniques, the subtle, unwritten knowledge of how to handle the difficult wootz steel simply faded away. It was a delicate chain of a specific material from a specific place, combined with a specific set of skills passed down through generations. When one link in that chain broke, the entire technology collapsed, leaving behind only the beautiful, mysterious blades themselves and a legend that would baffle scientists for centuries. It was a lost recipe whose ingredients we could only identify when we finally built machines powerful enough to see the invisible. The secret of Damascus steel was one of fire, patience, and a specific, irreplaceable ingredient from a faraway land. It was a metallurgical art perfected over generations by master smiths, a secret held in the rhythm of their hammers and the memory of their hands. When the ingredients vanished and the masters fell silent, the art was lost. Now, we leave the smoky world of the forge and travel back in time to another empire of master craftsmen to explore a technology that was just as legendary. We move from the secrets of steel to the mysteries of glass, and to a story of an invention so revolutionary its creator may have paid for his genius with his life. You are no longer in the dusty, caravan-filled streets of Damascus. You are in the heart of the Roman Empire in the 1st century A.D. The air is filled with the sounds of a bustling, confident civilization. And all around you, there is glass. This is a new phenomenon. For thousands of years prior, glass was a luxury item, as precious as gemstones, painstakingly molded and core-formed into tiny, exquisite vessels for the ultra-rich. But with the Roman perfection of glass blowing, the world has changed. Glass is suddenly everywhere. You look into the window of a bakery and see not an open shutter, but a pane of translucent cast glass, keeping the heat in and the flies out. You pass a tavern where citizens drink wine from cheap, mass-produced glass cups, not clunky pottery. You see wealthy women with intricate glass beads woven into their hair, and you pass shops selling glass bottles, bowls, and jars of every shape and size. The Romans didn't just use glass, they democratized it. They turned a rare luxury into a common commodity. But while the Romans were masters of mass-producing everyday glass, their most elite artisans were chasing secrets that bordered on magic. While the engineers were perfecting their immortal concrete, the glassmakers were pursuing their own form of immortality, unbreakable glass. To find this story, you must travel to the very center of power. You are now in the imperial court of the Emperor Tiberius, a gloomy and suspicious ruler. The air in the marble hall is tense. A man, a humble artisan, a glassmaker, has been granted an audience. He approaches the throne, holding a glass drinking cup. It is beautifully made, but it is still just a cup. He presents it to the emperor. Tiberius, unimpressed, examines it and is about to dismiss the man. "Throw it on the floor," the glassmaker says. The guards tense up. This is a strange, dangerous request. The emperor, intrigued by the man's audacity, does as he asks. He lets the glass cup fall from his hand onto the hard marble floor. But there is no satisfying shatter. There is no explosion of sharp fragments. There is only a dull thud. The cup lies on the floor, not broken, but merely dented, as if it were made of soft bronze. A stunned silence falls over the court. The glassmaker calmly retrieves the cup, and from the folds of his tunic, he produces a small hammer. With a few light, precise taps, he beats the dent out, and the cup is as good as new. He has done the impossible. He has invented vitrum flexile flexible, unbreakable glass. You would expect the emperor to be overjoyed, to shower the inventor with gold and build him a magnificent workshop. This invention could change the world. Windows would never break. Dishes would last forever. But Tiberius does not smile. His face darkens. He turns to the proud inventor and asks him a single, chilling question. Does anyone else know how to make this? The glassmaker, beaming with pride, declares that he and he alone holds the secret to his creation. He has secured his legacy, and in doing so, he has sealed his fate. The Emperor Tiberius. So the story goes, as told by authors like Pliny the Elder and Petronius, immediately ordered his guards to seize the man and have him executed. His workshop was to be destroyed, and his secret was to die with him. Why, the emperor's cold logic was one of economics. He feared that if a substance with the beauty of glass but the durability of metal became common, it would render the state's vast holdings of gold and silver worthless. to protect the value of precious metals, to prevent a catastrophic collapse of the Roman economy. This disruptive technology had to be eliminated. It was too revolutionary, too dangerous to the established order. And so, the secret of flexible glass was lost forever, not to time or neglect, but to a brutal act of state-sponsored suppression. Now, historians and archaeologists still debate this story. Was it a true account of a real lost invention, or was it a cautionary fable, a piece of political lore meant to illustrate the tyranny of emperors and the dangers of innovation? Could it have been a distorted memory of a different material, a clear natural polymer, or a strange metallic alloy that only looked like glass? We will never know for certain. No sample of vitrum flexile has ever been found. If the story is true, then Tiberius's suppression was horrifically, tragically successful. The recipe was lost before it ever had a chance to be written down, a secret that died in an executioner's grasp. It was perhaps the worst sales pitch in history, offering a godlike emperor a product that would undermine his divine wealth. But while unbreakable glass remains a legend, another piece of magic Roman glass has survived, proving that their artisans possessed a level of technical skill that defies easy explanation. Let the dark court of Tiberius fade, and find yourself in the quiet, climate-controlled sanctuary of a modern museum. You are standing before a single, beautiful glass goblet displayed in its own special case. This is the Lycurgus cup, dating from the 4th century A.D. As you look at it, with the light of the museum gallery reflecting off its surface, it appears to be a murky, opaque, jade-green color. It's intricately carved with a scene from the myth of King Lycurgus. It's a fine piece of Roman glassware, but its true secret is hidden. A museum curator presses a button. A light turns on inside the display case, shining through the cup, and you gasp. The cup is transformed. The murky green has vanished, replaced by a brilliant, glowing, translucent ruby red. It is as if the cup itself is bleeding light. It is a color-changing cup, a feat of artistry and science so advanced that we only figured out how it works by using electron microscopes. The Roman glass makers who created this cup were unknowingly masters of nanotechnology. They had managed to impregnate the molten glass with microscopic particles of gold and silver, each particle engineered to be only about 50 nanometers in diameter. That's 1,000 times smaller than a single grain of table salt. These nanoparticles interact with light in a bizarre way. When light reflects off them, they scatter green light. But when light passes through them, they scatter red light. The ability to create and control metal particles of such a precise, uniform size is a staggering technological achievement. How did they do it? How did they know the precise proportions? How did they control the firing temperature so perfectly as to create this effect? The recipe, the technique, the entire body of knowledge that allowed for the creation of this dichroic glass is completely lost. The Lycurgus cup is the lone survivor, a single, baffling artifact that proves that the legend of Roman magic glass was not entirely fantasy. While the story of unbreakable glass might be a myth, the reality of their achievements is, in some ways, even more incredible. From the widespread use of window panes that changed architecture forever, to the legendary suppressed formula for vitrum flexile, to the confirmed nanotechnological miracle of the Lycurgus cup, the Romans possessed a knowledge of glass that was deep complex, and, in its highest forms, so specialized and secret that it simply did not survive the fall of their civilization, leaving us with mysteries as beautiful and as fragile as glass itself. The story of Roman glass is one of light, a technology of transparency and color. It is a story that ends with the legend of an unbreakable cup and a single, surviving goblet that performs a magic trick with light, a secret of nanotechnology that was brutally suppressed or simply forgotten. We now leave this lost world of visual marvels and travel forward in time to a small city in Italy to explore a lost technology of sound. The secret we now seek was not held by an empire or a state, but by a handful of families, and most intensely, by one man. Like the glassmaker who approached the Emperor Tiberius, this man created something so perfect, so coveted, that its recipe became a legend, a secret he ultimately took to his grave. Let the image of the glowing red Lycurgus cup fade. The cold marble of a Roman court dissolves into the warm, fragrant air of a luthier's workshop. The year is somewhere around 1700. You are in Cremona, a small city in northern Italy, and this city is, for a time, the undisputed center of the universe for a particular kind of technology. This is the Silicon Valley of the violin. The air itself seems to hum with creativity. From the open windows of the workshops that line the narrow streets, you can smell the rich, sweet scent of maple and spruce shavings, and the sharp, intriguing aroma of resins, oils, and varnishes. This is the home of the great violin-making families, the Amatists, who first perfected the shape and form of the modern violin, the Guarneris, whose instruments are known for their deep, powerful, and almost brooding tone. And then there is the man who is considered the undisputed master, the one whose name would become a synonym for perfection, Antonio Stradivari. You step into his workshop. It is a space of focused, almost sacred order. Sunlight streams through the windows, illuminating the fine dust of wood that hangs in the air. Finished instruments, glowing with a luminous, reddish-orange luster, hang from the ceiling on a workbench. You see the tools of the trade, tiny curved planes, sharp knives, calipers, and elegant wooden templates. And you see the master himself. Stradivari is not a young man. He is in his golden period, an era from roughly 1700 to 1725, when his skill, his materials, and his inspiration all aligned to produce instruments of a quality that the world had never seen, and has arguably never seen since. He works with a kind of quiet, obsessive focus. You watch him select his wood, tapping a piece of spruce for the violin's top, or a piece of maple for its back, listening intently for its unique resonant properties. You watch him carve the graceful arches of the body, measuring the thickness at every point with a precision that is almost superhuman. He is not just a woodworker, he is a sculptor and an acoustic engineer, shaping the instrument's voice before it has ever made a sound. And then you hear it. A musician is in the corner of the workshop, testing a newly completed violin. He draws his bow across the strings, and a sound fills the small room. And you understand? It is a sound that is difficult to describe, but impossible to forget. It is both brilliant and warm. It has a power that can fill a concert hall, yet it possesses a sweetness and clarity in its quietest whispers. It seems to respond to the player's every intention, a living thing that sings with a voice of breathtaking purity and complexity. This sound is the secret. This is the lost technology. For 300 years, luthiers, scientists, and musicians have been trying to understand why this sound from this man's hands in this small city has never been perfectly replicated. The search for the secret of Stradivari is a journey into a maze of competing theories, a detective story where the clues are centuries old. The most obvious place to look is the wood itself. Stradivari used spruce for the tops of his violins and maple for the backs, ribs, and scroll. Was there something special about the wood available to him in the Cremonese Alps? One compelling theory connects the wood to the climate. The period when Stradivari was working coincided with a phenomenon known as the Maunder Minimum, a little ice age when temperatures in Europe were significantly colder. This would have caused the trees to grow much more slowly, resulting in wood that was unusually dense and acoustically resonant. Stradivari may have been unknowingly working with a kind of superwood, a raw material that simply no longer exists. But perhaps the secret was not in the wood itself, but in what he did to it. Another theory, supported by modern chemical analysis of his instruments, suggests that Stradivari treated his wood with a variety of mineral preservatives. You can imagine him soaking the spruce and maple in a solution of borax, chromium, and iron salts. His primary goal would have been practical to protect the wood from woodworm and fungus. But these chemicals would have also incidentally altered the wood on a cellular level, strengthening the fibers and changing its resonant properties in a subtle but profound way. The secret might have been a kind of accidental acoustic chemistry, a side effect of his meticulous preservation techniques. Then there is the most legendary and romantic theory of all, the varnish. For centuries, people have believed that the secret lay in the luminous, beautiful varnish that Stradivari applied as his final step. Was there a secret ingredient, a forgotten recipe? The theories are a wonderful mix of science and folklore. Some have suggested it contained exotic resins from faraway trees, or finely ground minerals and gemstones. Others have proposed more mundane, but no less intriguing, ingredients like egg whites, honey, or even the shells of shrimp. The truth is, modern analysis has shown his varnish to be a fairly typical oil and resin varnish of the period. But the legend persists. Perhaps the secret was not a single ingredient, but the entire process, the way the varnish was cooked, the way it was applied in thin, careful layers, the way it sealed the wood while still allowing it to vibrate freely. The real secret ingredient in the varnish may have been simply not telling anyone else the recipe. And this leads us to the final and perhaps most compelling theory, that the secret was not in any one thing, but in the man himself. It was in his unparalleled skill as a craftsman, the sum of a lifetime of experience, the perfect arching of the top and back plates, the precise thickness of the wood at every single point, the exact placement and shape of the F-holes, hundreds of tiny variables, all controlled by a master who worked by instinct, experience, and feel. He was not following a scientific formula. He was an artist, and the instrument was his medium. But this is where we encounter the great modern debate, the question that sends ripples through the world of classical music. Is the secret of the Stradivarius even real in numerous blind tests? where professional world-class violinists are asked to play a series of instruments from behind a screen. They are often unable to reliably distinguish a multi-million-dollar Stradivarius from a high-quality modern violin. Sometimes they even prefer the new one. This has led some to argue that the legendary sound is a powerful psychological placebo, because we know it's a Stradivarius because of its age, its rarity, its history, and its astronomical price tag. We simply believe it sounds better. Is this a case of a lost technology or a collective historical confirmation bias? The answer, most likely, is a beautiful and unsatisfying all of the above. Perhaps the wood really was special. Perhaps the chemical treatments had a unique effect. And perhaps the reputation of the instruments creates a halo effect that elevates them even further. But what is undeniable is that the specific magical combination of materials, skill, environment, and personal genius that existed in Antonio Stradivari's workshop during his golden period has been lost to time. It was not a technology that could be written down in a book of equations. It was an intuitive art. And when the artist died, the most important part of the recipe, his mind, his ears, and his hands, was lost forever, leaving behind a few hundred beautiful wooden boxes that produce a sound we are still trying and failing to perfectly understand. The sound of the Stradivarius is the ghost of a lost art, a secret of wood, varnish, and human genius that has never been fully exercised or replicated. It is a technology that became impossible to reproduce when its master's intuitive knowledge was lost to time. For our final story in this journey through the world of forgotten things, we turn to the most absolute, most final kind of lost technology. This is not the story of a lost recipe or a misplaced blueprint. This is the story of a technology that was a living thing, a plant, a gift of nature that was so precious, so useful, that we loved it to death. We consumed it into absolute and irreversible extinction. Let the warm, resonant notes of the violin fade into the sound of a gentle sea breeze. You are no longer in a dusty Italian workshop, but on the sun-drenched coast of North Africa, in what is now modern Libya. The year is around 300 BCE. You are walking the streets of Cyrene, a vibrant, wealthy Greek colonial city perched on a plateau overlooking the Mediterranean. The air is clear, the buildings are made of fine, white stone, and the city hums with the energy of trade and philosophy. And the source of this city's immense wealth comes not from a gold mine or a conquest, but from a unique botanical treasure that grows nowhere else on earth. Your guide takes you into the arid hills just outside the city. He points to a plant growing in the wild. It's a species of giant fennel, with a thick, stalky stem, feathery, fern-like leaves, and an umbrella of small, yellow flowers. It doesn't look like much, just a sturdy wild herb. But this is silphium, and it is, at this moment in history, one of the most valuable commodities in the entire Mediterranean world. It grows only here, in a narrow coastal band about 125 miles long and 35 miles wide, and, for reasons no one can figure out, it refuses to be cultivated anywhere else. All attempts to farm it, to transplant it to other parts of the empire with similar climates, have failed. Its magic is tied inextricably to this one small patch of earth, and its magic is manifold. This is the ancient world's do-everything plant. Its crunchy stalks could be roasted as a vegetable. Its roots were eaten fresh as a delicacy. Its delicate leaves provided a rich food source for livestock, and it was said that the sheep who grazed on silphium developed exceptionally tender meat. But the true treasure was the resin, a juice extracted from the plant's stem. This resin was a potent medicine, a panacea used by Greek and Roman physicians to treat everything from coughs, sore throats, and fevers to warts and indigestion. It was also the most sought-after food flavoring in the classical world. It had a pungent, resinous, celery-like flavor that Romans went wild for. It was added to countless dishes, from sauces for meat to seasoning for vegetables. It was the Roman equivalent of truffle oil or saffron, a flavor that signaled wealth and sophistication. But even these uses paled in comparison to the one property that drove its value into the stratosphere. The resin of the silphium plant was, by all accounts, the ancient world's most effective and reliable oral contraceptive. For centuries, women used a small peppercorn-sized dose of the resin once a month to prevent pregnancy. It was also said to be able to induce a miscarriage. In a world with few other reliable options, this medicinal property was priceless. It granted a measure of reproductive freedom that would be unmatched until the invention of modern hormonal birth control in the 20th century. This property, more than any other, is what made silphium worth its weight in silver denarii. The economy of Cyrene was built almost entirely on this plant. The city held a strict monopoly on its trade. The heart-shaped seed pod of the silphium plant was stamped onto the city's silver and gold coins, a symbol of the source of their power and a testament to its value. The harvest was, for a time, carefully regulated to ensure the wild populations were not depleted. But the demand was insatiable. As the Roman Republic, and later the Empire, grew in power and wealth, their appetite for silphium became ravenous. Roman aristocrats built fortunes trading it. The Roman state itself stored it in the official treasury in Rome, alongside gold and silver. The pressure on the wild stocks of silphium became immense. The careful regulations of the Cyrenians began to break down under the weight of Roman demand. Overharvesting became rampant. At the same time, as populations grew, local shepherds allowed their flocks of sheep to graze more heavily in the silphium-growing regions. The combination of taking too much of the plant and allowing livestock to eat the young shoots before they could mature was a fatal 1-2 punch. The supply began to dwindle. What was once abundant became scarce. What was scarce became astronomically expensive. By the 1st century A.D., silphium was critically endangered. It was becoming a thing of legend, a flavor that only the oldest Romans could remember. The Roman author and naturalist Pliny the Elder recorded the sad final chapter of the plant's existence. He wrote that, in his own lifetime, the very last stalk of silphium to be found in Cyrenaica was harvested and presented as a curiosity to the infamous Emperor Nero. And then there were no more. And this is where we encounter the final, wistful debate of our journey. Botanists and historians still debate the exact identity of silphium. Was it a now extinct species of the plant genus Ferula, a pungent relative of fennel, or could a tiny remnant population still survive, misidentified and unknown, in some remote, unexplored valley in Libya? Was its famed contraceptive power a real potent biochemical property, or was it a folkloric reputation that was amplified by its rarity and expense? The consensus is that the plant is, indeed, gone forever. Its unique dependence on the soil and climate of that one small strip of land, combined with humanity's insatiable desire for it, created a perfect storm for extinction. And so, our exploration of lost technologies comes to a close, not with a bang, but with a quiet, empty space where something used to grow. We have journeyed through the forgotten recipes for self-healing concrete and ripple-bladed steel. We have marveled at the lost blueprints for cosmic computers and the unwritten techniques for creating magical glass and music. But all of these are, in theory, discoverable. We could, one day, reinvent them. The story of silphium is different. It is more tragic and more final. This was not a technology we forgot how to make. It was a living technology that we drove from the face of the earth. It is a ghost that can never be resurrected, a flavor that can never be tasted again, a medicine whose secrets are lost for all time. It is a cautionary tale from 2,000 years ago about the fragility of natural wonders, a quiet warning that echoes with a stunning and profound relevance in our world today. Now, let the image of that last lonely silphium plant, standing in the dry African sun, begin to soften and fade. The journey through the past is over. The stories have all been told. Let the weight of history, the stone, the gears, the fire, the steel, the glass, the music, and the lost plant gently lift from your mind. There is nothing left to learn or to remember for tonight. Your only task now is to be here, in the quiet comfort of your room, feeling the gentle weight of your own blanket, noticing the soft rhythm of your own breath. Let the voice of the story become a distant murmur, blending with the soft background hum of the night. Let your thoughts drift and dissolve like sugar in water, leaving behind only a feeling of peace, of stillness, of letting go. You have traveled far, and now it is time to rest. Your journey ends here, in this calm and quiet moment, as you drift effortlessly down into a deep, sound, and wonderfully peaceful sleep.